not knowing or not believing it can shift, right? Because it's kind of like a perfect date. All right, so the world of pre-construction condos is completely falling apart. And yes, I know you know that. However, I have the 10 most common asked questions. My phone keeps ringing. Some questions are totally off the hook and ridiculous, and I sometimes ask myself, did you even take time to read your agreement and what you're going up against? So stay tuned and let's get right into the video. All right, so what was happening? What was so crazy and doable when it came to condos? Well, you know what, like it was that stigma, a good energy floating around condos, pre-con. Why? Because most of these towers were built in great locations. You don't have to worry about anything else. All you have to do, just sign the paperwork, and before you even receive your paperwork, you can sell it, make you know, the equity, make money, and obviously dump it into the next one, right? And so on, right? So most people did that, bought one, made money, then bought two after that. It's kind of like a gambling thing, like, you know what I mean? It's never enough and all of that stuff. But however, let's get into these questions. It is very interesting. And people ask me stuff like, why are so many buyers suddenly unable to close their pre-construction condos? I had that question. So look, it is very simple. Lack of funds, period, right? Because a lot of people lived beyond their means, like beyond their cash flow, beyond their income, beyond their earnings, period. But however, they have seen a neighbor invest and they said, like, look, if he can do it, I can do it, right? But who knows, maybe your neighbor has a solid foundation, maybe they have more money, maybe their company or employment allows them or the family to do so with less risk, right? However, those times opened up those can of worms, and that can of worms allowed every family or most families to actually take that leap of faith, take that risk. Money was cheap and everybody wanted to do it, right? Like everybody wanted to get to a particular level of excuse me, comfort or desired dream, right? So they might be looking at this and say, oh my gosh, this guy is out to lunch, but deep down they want the same thing. So they're trying to find their own ways how to get and be exactly what they're hating on, all right? So I think that created that bottleneck situation, that created that not knowing or not believing it can shift, right? Because it's kind of like a perfect date. You know, you go on a perfect date and everything is so smooth, and you have no idea that, you know, 45 minutes down in that particular date, you know, a booger will fall out of your nose and game over, right? Like you didn't anticipate that, you didn't believe that, but it happened and that's it. Your date is gone, right? So anyways, it is really true that you can just walk away and only lose your deposit. Oh my gosh, this is a heavy question, and this question I get almost every single time. As soon as I pick up and they say pre-con, I say, oh, I know what's coming. So usually the question goes like this, like, look, I am willing to walk away from my deposit. I said, okay, so how did you figure that part out? And they say, well, you know what? I put 5% and then I have put another 10%, right? So that's a total of 15, and I'm willing to walk away. I say, hold on a second. Usually it's 20% and then there's more on top of that. But however, to cut the story short, if a developer is willing to let you off the hook, right? either you negotiate it or they're willing to do so, then you maybe got a jackpot by only losing the deposit. However, there's more consequences attached to that. Like the developer can sue you for the differences. It can sue you for so many things until they get rid of that particular unit. So let me give you a quick example. Let's say you purchased your unit for $700,000 and you went to the bank and the bank said, look, it's worth, I don't know, $550, right? So there's like $150,000 gap. No problem. So what will happen, right? So that developer will take that deposit anyways, then they will try to sell the unit. And let's say they sell the unit to another buyer for $550. You still have to come up with a difference to top up to $700,000. Plus, there could be other consequences and other penalties and who knows what associated with that, right? Because each case is a little bit different and every builder and developer is a little bit different. All right, so what if the builder resells the unit for less? Can they actually come after you for the difference? I already said that. Yes, they can. Could you be sued for tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars after losing your deposit? Yes, I kind of answered that question. In the one answer, I summarized that yes, you can, and it all depends on the circumstance and the situation and the builder. And what about HST? Do you know who actually pays it? Yes, absolutely. So there's two parts to the answer. One part, if you bought it as a matrimonial home, you're moving into the property, the HST is waived. There's a couple of ways of doing it. One way is you pay it up front and then the government sends it back to you, or with the paperwork and the proper due diligence. If you prove that you're moving in as a matrimonial home, it's not a flip, is not an investment, then yes, the HST is not a part of it, right? However, most of these condo units were purchased as being an investment, right? And it was set up like that from the beginning. Now, most were hoping, anticipating, calculating that particular deal, because most of these purchases are, 4 or 5 years out, right? So people think like, okay, so, if I bought it in 2020, so 2025, I'm just gonna sit on it, and then before I have to take possession and the occupancy, I will obviously sell it via an assignment sale, which means you're gonna sell your paper, your agreement to someone else, and that someone else will take possession. Obviously, you'll collect the profits and all of that stuff, right? So it did work in the past. It worked wonderfully for many, many people, but now the things changed, right? So that's the issue today, because let me get into it a little bit more and you'll see why. Did anyone tell you that if you don't live in the unit, you might owe $24,000 or more in HST at closing? I kind of answered that question. Yes, it is true. Are you aware that lenders are appraising many of these units for less than what buyers paid? Yes, absolutely. This is a huge problem, right? Because one, if it's not set up as your matrimonial home, so your address, your personal, right? So it's set up then as an investment, right? An investment, there's HST on that. Gotta pay that. Now, if the closing comes in less, right? And it's not even a question anymore if it will or not, 100% it will come less than what you paid for years ago, 100%. So what happens is you have to top up on that price, right? So if you bought the unit for $700,000, it's appraised at $550,000, you, out of your pocket, have to come up with $150,000 extra in cash, deposit it in the bank, and the bank will say, congrats, the unit is yours. Now, there's also another path you can take, because most people don't have the extra funds, right? Like to top up on these low appraisals. So they came up with a blanket appraisals, right? So a blanket appraisal is that a bank will come in and will say, all right, so we will appraise you based on the original purchase, which is $700,000, and you will, you know, your mortgage and everything else will be at $700,000, and your unit, if you would sell it today, would be probably worth $550,000, right? So just analyzing the whole situation is basically you are paying for something that's not worth it. You cannot get out of it because you will be sued. If you rent it, you'll be under the water, you know, a monthly, right? Like a negative cash flow, 1,000%. So what are you going to do? So you're probably underwater for the next decade or more. So that particular unit will be an anchor tied to your to your leg or neck for a long time, right? So you have to deal with it, right? I know some people have kids, they you know, give it to kids if the kids are old enough or whatever. Like there's ways and there's situation how people don't get away with it, but they kind of like find other solutions or whatever. And if it works, it's great. If it doesn't work, I'm so sorry. Anyways, what happens if a gap is 50K or even 150K? Well, I already explained that. The gap could be whatever the gap is. Could be 50, could be 150, could be 350, whatever the appraisal is coming to. Planning to assign the unit. Do you know if the builder will even allow it? Okay, so in the past, I would say in the past agreements, when I read the agreements in the past, some builders said yes, some builders did not include that clause. I would say from 2000 and onwards, I've seen those clauses almost everywhere. However, I've also seen other clauses that are not as good, right? Like, or that cannot really support you further. And there are clauses that you're not allowed to lease the particular unit in the occupancy phase. And the occupancy phase is once you get the keys, once you move in, whether you pay HST or whether you move in as an owner, and you're gonna live there. Now, in that occupancy phase, you're still paying basically rent by the time that, you know, the entire building closes and you get title on that particular property. So in that phase, you're not able to rent it at all, right? So you literally have to, you're stuck with that particular unit, right? So I've seen that, and a lot of people didn't really like that, right? So I have seen also clauses where in case of an assignment or in case of sale, period, these units are not allowed to be marketed on MLS, on any of the boards, whether it's Toronto Real Estate Board or any of the boards, which cuts your exposure like exponentially. Who's gonna see you, right? Like, you know, like you'll have an agent putting it on their Facebook and they have 27 followers, like it's almost like the rate of success is 0%. All right, so let's move on. What if you walk away, just deposit or much more? I answered that. Can your credit be damaged? Can you be sued? Can it be banned for the future developments? I don't know a ban for the future developments. However, if you go bankrupt, obviously it will affect your credit overall. It will affect your credit period, and it all depends on the legalities and how far all of that goes down the pipeline, right? So it's more of a legal, it's more of a lawyer question, and it's more of a situation answer, which I cannot at this point, right? Did you read the fine print before signing, or did you trust the sales office to explain everything? All right, so at that period or around these periods, right? So we have to go back to 2019, 2020, 2021. So those were the kind of the times when people were buying in herds, when people were buying like these developers were selling hundreds of units a weekend. Like, it was just madness. So did they read the fine print? I would say 90% didn't, right? I believe that the sales representative or the sales office at the time did encourage them that they can take that, you know, agreement, that they can read it, and they can sit down in maybe an office or stuff like that, and they can go about the whole agreement and all of that stuff. And there's 10-day cooling period in every agreement, right? Like 10-day, you can take it to your lawyers and all of that stuff, right? But most most buyers were so in their head, or that FOMO, or the entire situation was kind of clogged up, because think about it. There are like 500 people lining up, and they released 100 units, right? And 500 people lining up. Like, you're fighting not to read an agreement. Most people were fighting to buy the unit, to put out the deposit, and let's move on. Give me another unit. We're lacking units. That was the whole strategy with buyers. Like, they did not care, right? And yes, you know, some would say, look, I know the agreements, I've done it before, don't worry about it, because nothing in their head triggered what if I cannot close, because it's far away. Nobody can think 5 years ahead. Like I cannot think 5 years ahead. Like, you know, 2-3 quarters, you know, maybe a year max, because you have no idea what can happen, right? So I think those are, we can summarize it here, that people that committed 5 years ago still have to follow through with their commitment, or the consequences will be enormous. So I hope you got something out of this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.